Hello there, and welcome back to the Josh Chris podcast. Today, we've got another guest with us, Princewill. He's a software engineer. We're going to talk about today, about his journey in tech, learn about memorable projects, and, he's going to also advise aspiring developers, people just starting out and stuff like that. So, of course, we are going to talk about lots of other things, as we go on, questions definitely will come up. So, we're gonna have a bit of time today, and yeah, let's do this. Principal, it's good to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Josh Chris podcast. Thank you for your time today and for joining the podcast. How are you?
Hi Joshua. Doing okay. It's also nice to be speaking to you on the Joshua podcast. Feels good to be here. What's up? How are you
Yeah,
yourself?
I'm great, doing great. Working on a couple of things actually. So I mean, it's a lot going on my end, but of course, I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. So let's get into some introductions. I'd love you to share a bit about your journey into software engineering. What initially sparked your interest, in this field? And of course, I mean, I did say a few things about you, but that was me introducing you. If you'd also, take the opportunity to reintroduce yourself to the audience, let the people learn about you even much more better.
All right. So my name is Princewill. I'm a software engineer. Um, I currently have 4 to 5 years experience, professional experience. Um, I work primarily on the back end. Yeah, primarily a backend engineer, but I've also had to like tinker with front end technologies, uh, mostly in the course of maybe building side projects or freelance projects. Um, I currently work with a company, a local company here. Quick check. Check is like a local lender. So we're into lending to smaller micro businesses. Yeah, so I'm currently backend engineer at Quick check. What was the next question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, so just wanted to learn about your journey, and learn exactly what
Okay.
sparked your interest in this field.
All right. Yeah. So I would say I got into. I've always been fascinated with computers, right?
Okay.
So growing up, when I was a bit younger, growing up, we used to have a what we call cyber cafe, just like
Yeah.
shops where you come print stuff and yeah. So we
Yeah.
used to have that kind of stuff. So I remember I would always try to like sneak around and just try and play around with stuff,
Oh
play
yeah.
games, chicken invader,
Oh yeah.
pinball, those
Yeah.
yeah. So those kind of things like sparked my interest. I was fascinated by computers and what you could do with them, but like from very early age because of that. So I I built up on that interest. Thankfully, I didn't really just let it die there. So sometime in um, I think that was 2013, 2014. So I discovered, I don't know if you know Waka. So Waka was like a
Okay.
CMS. Yes, Waka used to be like a CMS. Then it's a CMS is like a content management system. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more like a, yes. So it was I discovered it while trying to look for games and stuff. Warp Trick,
Yeah.
Warp
Yeah.
Type, those were
Yeah.
most of those platforms. Then were built with Wapka. They were built
Oh
on top of
really?
Wapka. Yeah, so it was during the course of trying to use these websites then to download games and stuff. So
Yeah.
I was fascinated with how they were built, and I started digging. So that was how I landed on Wapka. And as at the time, also I think I made a few websites for myself.
Oh yeah.
So if I remember
Nice.
correctly, yeah. So I had made um I can't remember the domain name, but I knew what we used to do then was you make the site on Wapka, and then there was a free because when you publish a site on Wapka, it has
Yeah.
like a .wapka.movie
Yeah.
domain extension, right?
Extension.
So
All right.
what we usually do is when you make the free website on Wapka, Wapka gives you their own extension, which is like .wapka.movie. So we would usually go to shorten it with another free service that's called .tk. So you now have your website .tk. So back
Yeah.
then we didn't really have money to like get custom domains like .com all kind of stuff like that. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mentioned that that was where my journey, my first journey into web development
Oh
started.
yeah. I mean,
But that was
yeah,
yeah.
that's really
So
cool.
after
Okay.
yeah yeah. So after that, sometime in 2016 was when I late 2015 to 2016 was when I got into like web development and programming properly because of course then the Wapka era was everything was on mobile and I didn't really learn about programming languages. So it was just I think the only thing I interacted with then was HTML. So, but as at 2015, early 2016 was when I got my first, when I delved into programming properly. So I first started with Python. So I had read the book, Automate the Boring Stuff by
Mm-hmm.
Al Sweigert. I don't know if yes, it's like a popular beginner introduction Python book. So I'd read it then. And I started, that was also the year I got my first laptop. So I started, trying out things on the book. The fascination just kept increasing and
All
so I was
right.
able to like do stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that,
That's quite an interesting
yeah,
journey, actually. I do remember WebTrick, that website, where you get games off of, and but
yeah.
I never knew what it was built with at the time. It was later on when I started getting familiar with content management systems. Apart from actually writing code, was the era of WordPress and stuff like that. But way back, you actually knew what WebTrick was built off of or built with. That was absolutely amazing. Quite a journey. That's quite an interesting one. I like that. Okay, I mean you've got over 4 years of experience, and do you want to talk about the most memorable projects you've worked on that shaped your career? I mean, think about people like Sam Altman, think about Mark Zuckerberg, think about, the big names you could think of. And there was just something, there was this project that probably shaped the career and stuff like that. Maybe someone who's looking at software engineering in this light thought about, what, let's look at AI or let's look at something else. But I'm not necessarily saying that's your own route or path, but I just want to know about a project of yours that actually shaped your career significantly.
Yeah. So I tend to look at when when you say shape my career, I think I would tend to look at that maybe in terms of impact.
Okay.
Um, so yes, so and if I go by that, I think a project that stands out was one that I did in sometime in 2021.
Okay.
So it was for the federal government of Nigeria,
All right.
right? So
Yeah.
it was basically a COVID response. Like it was a platform that was responding for COVID. I
Oh,
don't exactly want to mention
okay, that's fine.
the name of it.
Yeah.
Yes. So in terms of impact, it was so the scale and impact was enormous, right? Because this was it was regulatory, right? So
All right.
um, people had to. It was something that people had to use by regulation, right?
Yeah.
It was also in the immigration space.
Oh,
So if you
yeah.
think hard enough,
Yeah.
For anyone, yeah, if you think hard enough, you might
Yeah.
actually uh, connect the dots. But
Yeah.
I just don't want to mention
That's
it.
fine. I
So
can understand
yeah,
that.
yeah, it was for the immigration space in Nigeria. So it was in terms of impact and scale, it was like enormous because Nigeria is like a very large country, and um, it really shaped my career because that was as at the time that was the biggest project that I had worked on, right? In terms of
Yeah.
both, like when I say scale, that's like both user base and uh,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it was just the impact was huge.
Okay.
Thankfully, it was for the period of time that it ran,
All right.
it was a success.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. I mean, only talking about that, we could cover that, cover, more information about that on another episode or something like that. But that's really cool. Um, okay. So, I mean, have you ever faced any significant hurdles in your career path, you know, and like challenges, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, sure. I think challenges are like a very crucial part of life. I mean,
Yeah,
we live challenge every day, right? So
that's right.
waking up every day. So definitely there's been some challenges along my career path. I think one that stands out was the first time I was laid off. It's
Okay.
actually the first and the last. Yeah, it's been one experience.
Yeah.
So sometime in 2022,
Okay.
or was it 2023? That was actually last year. Yeah, sometime around May, June. I had joined a company that I started interviewing for. Like I basically interviewed with them from that should be October. Yes, October 2022.
Okay.
That was the first time I made contact. So we interviewed, had like multiple interviews up to, so I finally got an offer sometime in May. Yeah, it was like a foreign, uh, a foreign company, so it was going
Yeah.
to be remote. So yes, I got an offer in May, and then I started, and only to be laid off sometime in June. So
Oh.
it's just roughly a month, and yeah,
I mean,
so
but there was
it was quite.
feedback as to why they had to take that
Yes,
decision or that action. What was it about? Do you want to share with us?
yes, yeah. So there was feedback. So the feedback then was so basically they were a consulting company, right? So they don't build they weren't building products for themselves. So but they were more like consulting to get projects and then have engineers work on them. So the feedback then was two things. So at the time they said there wasn't enough projects to continue holding for me to work on them.
Oh.
So the thing was, so there wasn't enough projects matching my skill sets, right? So
Okay.
uh, according to them, said
Yeah.
I wasn't enough, right?
You were in what?
Then so senior enough,
Okay.
yeah. So that they didn't have projects for matching my seniority level then. So
Yeah.
uh, even though I didn't quite agree with that, right? Because
Okay.
I mean, so I was with them for a little over a month, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to like work on over the course of that period. I had like 10 tasks in total
Okay.
across three different projects. I had to onboard on three different separate projects. Yeah, so I I was able to complete all these tasks within this short time. So I was onboarding. I was normally, if you're joining a company, you have like some companies even give you up to a month for just onboarding,
On
right?
burden.
And
Yeah.
most
Of
most
course.
especially it's even on one project, right? Because but
Okay.
I onboarded projects, three separate projects, and was able to
Yeah.
also deliver
Yeah.
on that spirit. Yeah, I it was devastating, right? Because I
I can
mean
understand it.
the people. yes, the pay was significantly better than what I used to earn locally, right? So because
Yeah.
it was foreign currency and stuff like that. So
So how did you
and
take?
also there was
Okay. Yeah. Finish your
yeah, so
thoughts.
there was also relocation on sponsorship on the table then, right? So um yeah, so all those things I it was really devastating the news, but
I can
um
understand that. Yeah. I
so that
was
was
gonna
like
say, sorry to cut you short, but I was gonna say, with all of that, I mean, you had pretty wonderful benefits on the table, privileges and stuff like that. And I mean, think about it, onboarding processes could take up to 90 days. Lower than that, you know, depends on the company though, it could take a lot less, but you were onboarded and you had 3 projects you had to work on, probably different from the normal at that company because you had to learn about the processes and stuff like that. So you definitely knew it was much more than that. And you did all of that. So, and then they had to give you that feedback. How did you take that feedback constructively and, turn it around in your favor and walk us through that process of transformation and, overcoming that? Because according to how you expressed, it was devastating. I can totally understand it. I'd love to hear the better part of the story, the latter part, including
yeah,
how you scaled.
yeah. So basically the day I got the news, right? It
Okay.
was my interview then just broke the news to me on a one-on-one meeting. So I just took it, right? It wasn't like I was
Okay.
going to fight anyone. I just
Yeah.
tried my best to not react emotionally to it. Yeah. So I recall after that, after he broke the news, so there was like an exit interview planned between himself and I think the head of HR. So that was where I was able to like express how I truly felt about it, and for the most part, they actually quite understood. Like my engineering manager then was mentioned that I was. He actually just he said it himself. He said that I was out of everybody they've hired, like every engineer is saying that I was the fastest to get in like a pull request after joining. So I think I did my first PR in the first
And
week
what
of
what
joining.
was
I
the
think I
review on
had
the pull request? Were there any
yes, basically was
specifics, from the engineering team lead or any other team, leaders, team leads, that actually how to address that? Because certain people actually, the engineering team lead could address it, or the team leads could address the pull request, like, write a review on that. Did you get any suggestions as to it wasn't like that was gonna happen from even the review of your first pull request? Nah.
not exactly. So what? Yeah, yeah. So what I was trying to stress on was he was that was like a compliment from him because
Oh,
he
yeah.
said yes. So the turnaround time between the first time, I mean, getting a pull request into a new code base in the first
Yeah.
week of, so it was more like a compliment from him.
Yeah.
At how how fast I was able to like pick up things, right?
Yeah.
So his feedback then that he was
Okay.
also checking in with my direct team, the team that I worked. That as at the first 2 3 weeks that he was getting like really good reviews. But at some point that the reviews started changing and stuff. So um yeah, so basically I just took it that way. And the thing
This
was I
this
wasn't just the only one.
this the person you're speaking of, who what's his position at the company?
He was my engineering manager then.
Okay. Did he talk about any technicalities, like giving you
Yeah.
feedback? So do you want to share on that?
Yes. So at the time, right? So like I mentioned, I'm primarily backend.
Oh yeah.
So for most of my professional experience,
Yeah.
professional years, I work on the backend, right?
Yeah.
So I have not fully been like a front end person. So
Okay.
my interaction with front end has mostly been on freelance projects and also my personal hobby projects.
Yeah.
So I write, but back in the company, right, I had to
Yeah.
like pick up. So they had some like projects that I had to work on the front end. So
Yeah.
my front end wasn't strong as my back end skills, and I think um, it a particular task that personally I think that was when the whole downturn started. Right. So I
Yeah.
had this there was a that they had that I was assigned to
Hmm.
and mostly what I needed to do was mostly on the front end, right? So that
All
was
right.
my first time using web uh, and some of the JS tools that I encountered on the project. So
Yeah. Okay.
it was I was basically trying to pick things
Oh
up and
yeah.
also ship at the same.
Got it.
So that was I think that was where the whole issue started, right? So
I
there
got it.
wasn't room for me to pick up
Yeah.
things. So so that I think that was he also mentioned he pointed out that particular task because personally I knew that was the only task that I had you know
So
had a lot of
how did you overcome all of this?
so I got laid off so thankfully I was very prudent with my
Yeah.
savings then so I didn't quickly switch up my lifestyle and
Yeah.
so I had like because I mentioned it was like foreign currency and so
Yeah.
I had like because
Yeah. Okay.
I was also paid months where when I was laid off so that was able to like sustain me for a long while because I was out of job from June. So I was laid off June first, around first, second week of June. I was out of job till like around September. That was when I joined my current company, and
So right.
thankfully,
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say right now, putting things side by side, I do want to know about the specific, you know, remarkable changes you've actually made or you've seen, as a result of that.
yes. So looking back, I would say the experience shaped me right because I think getting laid off is like uh, I would say it's if you try to like equate it to relationships, I think it shapes character, right? So
Yeah.
it's more like when you are broken, right? It shapes you as a person. So I think in the job, in terms of career, getting laid off is can be likened to like a heartbreaking relationship. So you learn from it, you become tougher, and you also like you are more in tune with the possibility of that. It also shapes how um, you interact with you work, right? You have that
Yeah.
understanding that I'm not indispensable, right? I mean, if I'm not doing well or if the company thinks I'm not doing okay or probably challenges I could be let go at any time. So that experience helps you also, kind of it teaches you to prioritize yourself. This is not for you to like uh, be selfish or not have the company interest, but I
Yeah.
think it helps you establish balance, right? So
Yeah.
you put yourself, you understand that regardless of what is happening, right?
Yeah.
You can this is not permanent.
Yeah.
Basically, nothing is permanent, right? The dream job
Yeah.
can let you go in.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, on the technical side too, right?
Okay.
Since then, I have also tried to pay more attention to upskilling around the front end, right?
Yeah.
Even though I don't usually work professionally, that's not where my job designation doesn't always say
I mean,
front
it's
end
quite
or full
interesting
stack.
though, thinking about that. I mean, even when they onboarded you there, they should have learned about your specific responsibilities and the things that you were good at and not really good at, compared to the others. So, thinking about it, you're a backend, primarily a backend engineer. Why didn't they actually say, you know what, since that's what you do, stay there, you're gonna work on the backend? Or was it really that they needed you to do full stack?
Yeah, exactly. So during the interview process, actually, it's surprising that we talked about this a lot, right? So I had mentioned that I was more of a backend person, right? But I
Okay.
was very really into front-end technologies because even the task that I had to do for during the interview phase, it was like a full stack task. So um, while we were going through the task, we had that conversation because they noticed I struggled a bit on the front end, which is like that was like a React project with a Django, backend. So when we're having discussions also on the projects during the interview, we
Hmm.
pointed out that, and we actually found it where I mentioned that, yeah, I am more of a backend focused person, and they were they seemed quite cool with it, right? And
Okay.
they said there was room to like, or in practice, that wasn't really what happened, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I can totally understand that, because I'm thinking about the company right now and the board members, the team leads and stuff like that. Maybe, you know, and the people in charge of the company's finances and stuff like that. I'm thinking probably they probably did not have enough developers and engineers, and as such, they needed to have more full stack developers, and stuff like that. You could think about lots
yeah,
of things, so yeah. But I mean,
yeah,
you of course have transformed so far, technically and mentally. That's really good. Any other thoughts on that you want to share?
yeah.
Oh, that's it.
Maybe just to say that I didn't really kind of like hold a grudge. I just understood it for what it is. I mean, it's business decisions, right? The
Yeah,
company would always do what they think it's best for them, right? So I am still very much in touch with a lot of nice people that I met there. A lot of were still like, I could reach out to them, and yeah. So it's there was no bad taste, right? It was just what it is. It was business decision. So
yeah,
yeah, just that's my
yeah. All right. I mean, looking at your profile, beautiful profile. Let's talk about what has been your biggest influence in the tech industry, and tell me about how it's shaped, you know, your approach to software engineering.
All right. So by influence, I'd assume maybe someone or people I look up to, or
Yeah,
some like,
yeah,
okay. So but I think the way that I approach uh, influences, I usually do not. I don't think I'm someone that I don't have a particular person that I try to like, say I look up to. So basically, how it works for me is I generally I'm someone that loves excellence, right?
yeah,
So I when people like when people are excellent at what they do, right? So basically anyone who's excellent at what they do, anyone who's like at the top of their game and in the industry is right. Yeah. So what I come across, I could just come across a random person, maybe on Twitter or LinkedIn. Someone just shares a project or someone just drops some thoughts or insights that I find really you know fascinating or something. So that's just how I could just give you a follow or connect with you. And so for me it's like a growing list, right? So I don't have exact people that once you're excellent and I stumble upon you
yeah.
on your profile or anything, I immediately just so it's like long list of people. I don't have exact people that I follow very passionately. It's
Okay.
just if you're good,
Yeah,
if you're good at what you do, I admire you from from afar.
yeah. I
Yeah,
had this
just
podcast. episode with Angela, a software engineer, a full stack software developer from Pakistan. She shared lots of beautiful things. Her journey is absolutely transformative, and if it's quite a journey. I love the podcast we had, and she talked about a few people that she actually um, admire, people that actually inspire her, and they've got a big influence, on her career and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, great, great. Thank you for that beautiful answer. Let's talk about this. So, you've worked with technologies like Python and JavaScript. Here's a question. How do you choose the right tech stack for a project? What factors do you consider and stuff like that? Because you do know that working with a team is totally different from freelancing. If you were freelancing, I had this podcast episode with Sunday about React.js and stuff, React Native, mobile development, something like that. And I did say to him, and I'm saying the same thing actually, that if you are a freelancer and you want to work on a particular project, it's your decision to actually say, you know what, this is the tech stack I'm going to use. This is the database I'm going to use. These are the tools I'm going to use for testing. I'm going to use this. For this, I'm going to use this. It's your decision, right? But if you're working, with a team, you're on a team, it's not necessarily just your decision. You might be the engineer and team lead, but it's a collective decision, and you have calls and stuff like that, and so it's, we've got different parts there, right? So based on that, with that backstory, how do you choose the right tech stack for a project? What factors do you consider?
All right. So, like you mentioned, I think it depends on the dynamic, right? So, if you're working on personal project or maybe a freelance project, uh, you basically have that decision to make for yourself solely, right? And
Yeah,
most times you'd opt for what you're most comfortable with,
yeah,
because
that's right.
uh, it's a freelance job. I don't think whoever is giving you the job would give that allowance for you to pick up new stuff, right? So most likely you use what you're comfortable with already, yes, and get the job done. So, in terms of where you're working in an organization, right? So, like you mentioned, it's not going to be a sole decision, especially if you're not, at the top of the hierarchy, right? If you're not, yeah. So, and most times, if it's in an established organization, right, there's already going to be data to support whatever decision you're going to make, right? And there might be some other factors too that would point you towards decision. So let's say you have like dependence, like your projects are going to have to integrate with some other things, right? Or they're going to have like dependencies on some other projects. So you'd most likely opt for the tool that would integrate, seamlessly with the existing systems that you have, right? Also, you would also have had maybe by past projects that the company has, built or undertaken. They would also have had, they would have tested the waters, right? So they would have known what works best for them. So it's just like um, in the Nigeria banking sector. I mean, the .NET and Java, these are like the holy grail of software development as long as banking in Nigeria is like concerned. So 90% of the time, whatever they're going to do there, it's going to be based on that. So that kind of place, there's really not enough. There's no choice basically, right? Because these are like most of their systems, legacy systems are all dependent on these technologies. So there's a lot of factors, but overall, I think um, in if you're working in a team and you're going to have to make the choice of settling for a technology or a tool to get the job done. Some factors that you might want to consider before making that decision is like, what's the members of your team or whoever is responsible to get the job done is already comfortable with, right? That has to be factored in. The time that you have to, from ideation to like implementation and going live, the time factor also has to be put in place, because if you're on, very short deadline, if you have like a very short deadline, it won't be ideal to start picking a thoroughly new technology that most people are not familiar with. Even if it offers better, even if it offers more efficiency in some areas, that time factor is going to be very limited. So that's also a factor. And yeah, I think that's mostly how it works in organizational spaces, right? But when you're doing solo projects, most times you settle for uh, what you're most comfortable with to get the job done.
So yeah. All right. So let's talk about your best practices, or rather best practices you recommend for developing and maintaining robust web applications. You could think about lots of things here, thinking about speed, performance, and even scalability, in the long run and stuff like that.
All right. So for best practices, well, uh, the same way web development is like divided into two parts, front end and the back end. I think there exists you know best practices for each of those parts, right? Also, I know that there are things that apply cross board, which are things like modularization, right? Trying to like separate concepts while writing your code, um, making sure that everything is that's just like the single responsibility principle, right? So making sure that things are compartmentalized so that it allows for extensibility and maintenance in the future. Practices like testing, making sure that it tests every unit of code, unit testing, integration, end-to-end testing, things like that. Basically, making sure that your whatever code you write does what it's meant to do. Things like documentation. I can't hear you if you're talking.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna sorry about that. I was gonna say let's talk about databases as well. And also talking about documentation, that's a great point there. And okay, just go on with the points and maybe also talk about databases because there's lots of platforms out there. How do you decide that this project, this web application is gonna scale? Just thinking about scalability, how do you even choose, the right database to work with? Because, it depends. If you're working with AWS, you gotta pay as you go, and how do you make decisions and stuff like that? But continue, you were talking about documentation.
Yeah. So in terms of best practices, like you asked initially, so things like documentation,
Yeah.
both your code and also documenting the high level setup of systems. Those are also like good practices to adopt. Other things like adopting object-oriented programming. So wherever you can, make sure to think in classes, right? It allows for more robust maintenance, right? People are able to like, I mean, it's pretty much standardized, right? So think about whenever you can adopt object-oriented programming. Um, that's also like a good practice to follow. Um, Also choose, like you mentioned before, choose the right stack, right? Because
Mm,
some technologies actually do better for some kind of project. So technologies are like battle tested for some kind of project.
yeah.
So an example is the AI field and stuff like that. So Python is like a very major player in that space. So unless you have like a very major reason why you need to opt for another language, most likely you would want to do AI related stuff with Python, because I mean there's more community, um, there's more resources around it. So this is just like an example, right? So these are all like things to consider on a high level, right? Um, yeah.
All
So your
right.
second question
Oh
was
yeah,
your
I could actually tie it together in to this question I want to ask now, talking about, because you've got experience with cloud platforms like AWS, Azure. Uh, do you want to talk about key considerations for a startup when deploying, their applications to the cloud?
yeah. So cloud discussions are like very they're very dicey because um
Oh yeah,
like the shiny like they're like it's a very shiny topic.
yeah.
So, but how I like to think about it is, um, so when starting out, I just like to advise, or personally, I like to prioritize just keeping things simple first, right?
Hmm.
So if there is no need for something, I don't add that extra complexity, right? So
Yeah.
someone I I admire how he's been building stuff. Is I don't know if you know levels IO on Twitter. So it's like an indie.
Oh, I'm not really on Twitter.
Yes, levels. The guy
I
is
should
building
I should
like
start using my
a lot
Twitter
of
app more often.
yeah. So, this solo guy who's just like building stuff. You should know remote dots. Okay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so levels is like the founder of remote. Okay, so it's
Oh,
just the same like building a lot of stuff, and they're actually doing numbers. Like he's turning like his personal projects into very viable businesses and making lots of money for him. So
that's
he's
nice.
also very confident in the way he thinks about cloud and managing these projects. So he he's very opinionated when it comes to picking up these new things, Kubernetes, stuff like that. So on Twitter, he used to be trolled then because he was basically doing bare machines, like he was running his stuffs on a VPS, according to him. Then that's like a private server, the old way. It's also on the cloud, but it's not like the cloud native. It's just basically you renting a machine and then um
Yeah,
yeah, just putting all your stuff there. That's like
yeah,
the old way of doing things.
yeah,
So he's been able to like scale his products
yeah,
to his business into a very good place, even while still keeping with the kind of like the mundane way of doing things. So he's
oh
very
yeah,
opinion. So, and I think that's how I would also think about cloud and when you're starting out, right? I think it's just focused on getting something out there, right? So I
yeah,
like to think that things would happen on their own, right? So in your journey as a startup or in your journey as someone who is trying to get something out there, if in the long run you blow up and there's a need for all the shiny tools, that need will actually necessitate you most likely find a way around it. So the goal is not to introduce those complexities before you actually need them, right? So what I'm trying to say in essence is bare machines still work. Just getting the VPS still works. But if you're going to want to go cloud native from the onset, right? The key thing there is to make sure that you understand what you're going into, right? It's to
yeah.
make sure that you have very good knowledge of how the services work, because there's a lot of things to consider. Cost. Cloud is not cheap.
Of course.
A cloud resource is not cheap.
Yeah,
So unless you have have like a deep pocket at that stage. Yeah. So as much as you can know about these services, know how they are costed, know how they work, know how they scale, right?
Yeah.
Just knowledgeable, because if you delve into it initially and maybe set up a bunch of stuff, you could even end up setting up things that you don't need, right?
Absolutely.
Um, once you now grow and maybe you become like very dependent on some of these services.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you become like a bottleneck trying to like
Yeah.
step up. Yeah. So those are like key things to consider. If you're knowledgeable enough, if you know about the services that you want to use, most likely you're going to like optimize your setup. So if you're not so knowledgeable, then get people that they're professionals who actually major in helping people and startups optimize, their cloud adoption, right? So that's just the key thing there. Just know the services, know how they work, understand how they work, understand how um, they are priced, and yeah, that's the key thing. Because if you don't understand them and just end up, putting up a bunch of signing up for a bunch of things, because there's a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Even you don't need
And
an IP
yeah.
address, right? So,
Yeah.
eh,
As
so
freelancers, if you're freelancing, I mean, you could do a lot of learning yourself, do a bunch of research yourself and, acquire the necessary knowledge at certain levels, and work with that. But I do really think that that's why it's beautiful working with teams and stuff like that. Even though later on you might say, you know what, I just want to freelance.
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
if you were working with a team, you would learn about how they actually make these decisions. Now, I know there is, we've got the hierarchy there, but you might actually be friends with a team lead, or you could actually have chats with your leaders and stuff like that. You might just be a junior developer, an intermediate, or senior developer. But of course, there are other positions and stuff. But if you make the efforts to learn about how decisions, come to how they make decisions and stuff like that, what they really consider, because not everyone is part of the decision making board, right? It's gonna give you
yeah,
the platform to actually learn from, experts and stuff like that. So you don't get off that team and you didn't grab specific, skills or, factors to consider when, making decisions, around stuff like that, because you might get on freelancing and working on personal projects as well. But whenever you're working with teams, you need to ask the right questions. And even though that's not part of what you should be working on, you probably the project you might just be, creating or working on a simple feature, but learn about other things, and stuff like that. It's good for maybe later on you might want to start, a business in tech and stuff like that. All right, that's really good. So let's talk about how do you approach collaboration within a development team, especially when working on large projects. Yeah, let's talk about team collaboration.
yeah. So I think software engineering is like uh, um, it's not a job that for most of your career or for most of the time you're going to be involved in it, you'd most likely like work with teams. Like
Yeah,
it's but it's not something you do like solo, right? So learning how to integrate with teams, learning how to like work and collaborate with a number of people is like a key skill that anyone who's like going to do um, who's looking to do well in the space should have, right? And
yeah,
I think something that is at the core of that is basically trying to keep your egos at the door, right?
yeah,
So eh, don't be too don't carry your ego around. Just um, interact with people, right? Be humble
yeah,
enough to you're not. going to there's a lot to learn, of course.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if you're in software or anything related to it, you're basically going to learn till the day you stop working. So it's not something that you master and then stop learning. So once you understand that you are always learning, there's always going to be things to learn. You just have to be very humble enough. I think humility is like the key requirements to integrate with teams, right? Because
Yeah,
if you're humble and if you know how to treat others, right? If you
yeah,
understand that no one is like an island of knowledge, right?
yeah,
You're going to need people to put
yeah,
you through on things. You also
yeah,
need to put on things. So they're not stupid questions. Yeah. So basically, understanding that it's a continuous journey, right?
yeah,
It's a learning journey. You're going to have to learn from people.
yeah,
Whole like 90% of the time, you'll be learning from people. So, and
yeah,
you also have to, because you most likely have to work with people who you're more uh, skilled than, maybe junior interns and stuff like that. So, you at some point in your career, you'd also be at the point where you have to like give out knowledge instead of take.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you also be able to treat the people that look up to you, people that are looking to learn from you, treat them with dignity and respect, irrespective
Yeah,
of the fact better. And yeah, and the people who, and when you also get to be the one who's going to learn from someone, hopefully that person also treats you right. So just be the person. There's this way they say it. They say be the senior you wish you had,
oh
something
yeah,
like that. So
that's a great sign.
if if you're getting in, when you're getting in, yeah, when you're trying to like climb the career ladder,
Yeah,
there's a kind of people that you have, people that that are not judgmental, people that are free to share knowledge, people that treat you with respect, despite you just trying to get the hang of things.
yeah,
So when you're at that level, right, endeavor to also treat people who are coming up the same way. So I think if if we adopt this thinking, should integrate well with teams, because everybody just loves to be around people who respect them, people who
yeah,
value them. Yeah, so just value people and respect. Throw your ego at the door, and yeah,
yeah. I'm thinking right now
that's
about, having, yeah, that was really good. Thank you so much. I'm thinking right now about having a dedicated podcast episode on that. I was gonna throw my lights there, but that was just packed with so much information. Thank you so much. But again, I'm thinking about the time, wanting to keep this podcast episode within, you know, a time limits and lots of beautiful things to share. Actually, thank you for that. So, the tech industry is rapidly always changing. Do you want to talk about how you actually stay up to date with technologies, and trends, the latest ones and stuff like that? How do you do it?
yeah. So in terms of keeping up, the truth is you actually cannot keep up, so to speak.
Okay.
You basically have to play catch up all through your career. That's basically what tech is, right? Because
Mhm.
there's always something new coming out. There's always something new to learn, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think
Yeah.
the key thing then, identify what you really need. The ability to filter out the noise.
Yeah.
Um, yes. So basically, identifying what you really need. Knowing when this is just that shiny object, and knowing when this is something I should key into, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like I'm going to use the front end space as an instance, right? So if you're a front end person now and you have not adopted any major React framework, sorry, JavaScript framework, maybe you're still sticking to vanilla JS and maybe jQuery, and
Yeah.
actually look to adopt any of these big three, React, Angular, and Vue,
Yeah.
um, maybe Nest.js.
Yeah.
If you've not taking the time to actually look at these things, then I don't think you're doing yourself any good, because
Yeah.
it is clear that it's not just noise, right?
Yeah.
This is what the industry has transitioned to. So um, basically just knowing what to follow, because there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of noise. There's people are building new tools every day. So it's basically knowing when it is noise and when it's something you should latch onto. It's just like AI too. If anyone thinks AI is noise at this point, then you must be living on that. So
Absolutely.
there's no doubt that AI is like it's somewhere that is what it's something that is it's a topic that's worth following. It's a space that is worth getting into if you can.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, what I basically do is I try to keep up to date. So there's a difference between knowing what's happening and being part of that. So in terms of knowing what's happening, I use newsletters like TechCrunch and stuff like that. I follow some industry influencers on Twitter and LinkedIn. Yeah, that's basically how I tend to keep up with what's happening. In terms of also picking up new things, um, well, if you're opportune to be in a company that is that adopts new tools quickly, right? Because some
Mm-hmm.
companies are that's like picking up new tools, and that's like a plus for you because you don't need to put any extra efforts. Most likely you're going to work with that new stuff at work. Or if you're not opportune to do that, basically you'd have to like take that extra effort on your own to look out for new things. So when you hear about new things, just check them out. If it looks like something that interests you or something that you feel it's going to be beneficial to pick up in the long run, then you just have to dive right in. Yeah.
All right. Following up with that, let's talk about this. I do want to know what's one piece of advice you would give to aspiring software engineers just starting out, actually, someone starting the journey in tech. What's one piece of advice you'd give to them?
So for advice, I think the obvious thing to say is there's no way around it, right? You have to get down and do the work, right? If you have to get down and learn stuff, pick up new stuff, there's going to be like a lot of these spent just consuming information, right? And it can be overwhelming, just like picking up any new thing, right?
Yeah.
Because so whenever it's like that, when you feel overwhelmed or when you think this is not for you, it's nice to always remember that it's a new stuff, and it's always like that. You were not born with it, no one was born with it. So
Yeah.
it's persevere and actually get through those days. Just keep keep learning as much as you can, right? Keep learning, keep
Yeah.
building stuff, and also talking about noise again. Try to avoid the noise while you're learning, because there's this thing that happens when people are trying to pick up stuff, right? Let's say
Yeah.
you're learning Python, and along the line, maybe on Twitter, on LinkedIn, you hear people mention that this is Python is no longer the way to go. Maybe it's this new language or stuff, and then
Oh
you
yeah.
have to like you dump um, Python and then you pick up new stuff. So once you're convinced, when you pick up a technology and you're convinced that yes, I want to learn this or I'm enjoying this, it's very crucial to not let noise or recommendations like get in your way, right? Just lock in and do what you need to do. And the
Have
good
you?
thing about
Okay.
programming, um, if you manage to get proficient with a particular language or two, those knowledge usually applies. It's easier to pick up newer ones because, I mean, at the basics, like the fundamental of all these things are it's usually the same thing. I mean, things like for loops, variables, it applies across board, right? So if you're
Yeah.
able to like learn one and get to a certain level of efficiency, it's usually easier to pick up other new ones. Yeah. So another thing that
Okay.
I would advise, advancing career wise is network. So network is like it's you can't. I don't think you can overemphasize the need for networking, and just knowing the right people or right persons can turn your life around, right? So
Yeah.
just a few days ago, someone built something. I think university students in America just built something and published it on Twitter, and the CEO of Shopify just extended an internship to him just on Twitter. So
Wonderful.
I don't think if he had maybe just applied for an internship just like that without that.
And he actually went public with what he was doing privately, right? He went public with his work,
Yeah.
you know?
So
So,
yeah, as much as you can, also try to be public about what you do, right?
yeah, I've got,
Uh,
I was gonna say, I've got
yeah,
this upcoming podcast with Brooke Sweeter. Look her up on LinkedIn later. She's absolutely amazing. So we're gonna be talking about that and a lot more other things actually. So yeah, look out for that. Go on.
yeah. So as much as you can afford to, be vocal about what you can do,
Yeah,
but have my reservations about that, right?
yeah,
Probably personality type, more on the introverted, uh, spectrum, right?
yeah,
So also, I feel like some people chase noise too, right? So I do not let maybe the need to be out there take away your need to. I think the way to summarize it is
okay,
if you don't feel if you haven't deep down if you know you haven't really um, get into a certain level of depth or understanding, it's also fine to just learn in your space, right? It's also fine to just bend down and just those periods of learning. You don't necessarily need to be out there, because yeah, the downside of it is if you are that focal and you lack the necessary skills, if you manage to land an opportunity then and it turns out that your skills are not as loud as you were.
yeah. That's quite interesting. Actually, following up on that, people tend to learn for ages, quote unquote, you know, especially when you don't have anyone to guide you. You're a beginner, you've got no compass and stuff like that. How would you, um, we've got a couple minutes to go though, but how would you, do you have any specific strategies, for, actual remarkable productivity and accountability, where you say, you know what, in the next 6 months, I should have got into this place in the next 1 year, because people just learn for such a long time and there's hardly progress, they just move it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, it's very common, right? It's also something that I experienced while starting out. I tried Java, tried Python, tried PHP. Uh, yeah, so it's very, especially when you're self-taught, right? You're
Yeah,
trying to like, it's very hard. So, but a few tips that I would leave is, as much as you can, opt for a course, like a course that is like has a progression, right? That takes you
yeah,
from a particular to yes, because that way there's the teacher or whoever is in charge of the course has actually taken time to actually structure things so you learn, be able to like progress. So as much as you can opt for a course that has like progression. Second thing is have like do project based learning, right? So
okay,
it's usually when you have something that spurs you to learn something, right? So let's say you want to build a WhatsApp or Twitter, right?
okay,
These are just instances, right? But
yeah,
you get what I mean.
yeah,
Let's say
I
you
do,
start out and the end goal is to be able to build Twitter, right? So
yeah,
when you have that kind of goal, right? when you're learning, you're measuring, you have something to measure against, right?
Yeah.
If you're learning a particular topic today, you know what that topic has taught you in terms of what your end goal is. So let's say you learn about WebSockets today, and then you know that Twitter uses WebSockets to publish push likes and in real time stuff like that. So if you've learned WebSockets, you know that you can now do that feature in your Twitter that you're trying to build. So project-based learning is another good way to like have um, that offers structure to your learning because you're learning against the goal. As you're learning, you're trying to see judge yourself against what your end goal is. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's also
This is absolutely
um,
great. Okay, yeah, go for it.
yeah, I think those are the two that come to mind now.
Okay, so I was gonna say that this is just great. I mean, I'm enjoying this podcast episode, the conversation, the questions, the answers, and every answer you give, there's a lot to actually debunk, there's a lot to actually decode and actually even ponder on and say much more about, but because of time, we would only say a few things, and everyone right now. Should we have another episode sometime? Probably, to go over a lot more because the questions are never done, and I'm looking at the time.
Well, unless from your own side, if you cannot afford to,
Should we?
extend a
No,
bit, but
no, I can actually extend a bit. I'm just trying to let the audience know that this is absolutely so phenomenal. All right, so yeah, so we're talking about that, and you shared lots of beautiful insights there. you know it's actually important that beginners actually understand stuff like that, and I do talk about scheduling a lot. You say to yourself, do you know what, this is my path, to make the necessary research, and you say, I want to do this, I want to become a backend engineer, a full stack developer, whatever it is. And you say, for this period of time, I'm going to be working on these. There's lots of factors to consider to put in place to actually help you, you know, um, put and bring in accountability, into what you are doing, because then that's going to make you productive persistently. And yeah, so the insights you shared, just absolutely phenomenal. Okay, here's another question for you. Quite a beautiful episode today. I'm enjoying this. It's really great. I think the audience is getting so much value. If you're getting a lot of value, I mean, of course, you're getting lots of information from this episode. You wanna, and actually, if you do have questions, the previous one I had this episode with AC Monday about Web3 and blockchain, you know, and yeah, I did say, they could drop comments, and they've actually started dropping comments. So if you've got any specific questions for Princewill today, you could drop them in the comments, or actually, you're gonna send me all your links, or we could just drop your LinkedIn if someone wanted to say hello to you and stuff like that. All right, so let's talk about. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about navigating remote work, right? Are there challenges you face with the rise of, remote work in today's day and age? If there are, how have you actually adopted your workflow to stay productive? Of course, there are, but I would say remote work. I love remote work, right? Because think about lots of features. So go for it.
yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I think challenges are like a very integral part of our lives, right? So and also for remote work, there exists a lot of challenges too. Um, so, but I think if you I think the flexibility it offers, right, is enough for you to do whatever you can to see that you um, overcome those challenges. Because I mean, would you rather choose heading out to the office every day instead of trying to like instead of having the remote option and also trying to like do everything that you can in your power to make sure that yeah you're able to stay remote. So. Uh, I think that is the first thing. If you understand the flexibility that it offers you, you would do whatever it takes to stay on top of whatever challenge that comes with it. So things like staying motivated or productive, because I mean we're all human beings, right? And in some way we require some form of control. Some environments actually make us be more productive when we know that maybe there are eyes watching us, or this what the office space does, right? You know that you're here for work. So essentially you try to like create that kind of environment, right? In your space. So whenever you are in that space, whenever you're in that corner, it looks like work, feels like work, right? So I mean, if you're on your bed, that there's definitely a difference between maybe sitting on your bed and trying to work, and when you have like a proper table set up and in a corner with a chair. Or just that difference in setting, you know, gives your brain um a different vibe, that to know that yeah, this is time for serious business. So as much as you can, try to create that atmosphere in your space, that kind of like makes it feel like actual work, right? So it doesn't look as if you are not, you know,
Okay.
basically just make it like work. Secondly, so this might not apply to the broader audience, but I mean, for people like us from not so advanced countries, right? We have struggled with power, internet, and stuff like that. So as much as you can, try to mitigate against those. So mitigating can be having fallbacks, right? So for internet, we have multiple ISPs, so when one fails, you have like a fallback, right? So that way you're able to like, you're prepared for that challenge. For power, you can opt for other, you know, cheaper sources, maybe like solar. Personally, that's what I use. So I don't have issues. I because for me, without power, without like uh stable power, without stable electricity, there's no remote work, right? So as much as you can, try to solve those. I think those are like the basics: internet and power. If you're able to like solve those, uh, you're like 70% or 80% down with problems of remote work. So try to solve your power, because it looks very unprofessional when you have to like make excuses, even though these are realities, right? We know that's, I mean, there is not enough power on the national grid to like feed everyone of us, right? So, or if you are given that opportunity by your employer, or if you have the opportunity to be employed to work remotely, I feel it's your duty to make sure that you, no matter what the odds are, right, that you live up and show up. So you don't have to keep making excuses for power and stuff. So whether it's generator, multiple, going to maybe a place that's moving to a place that has more power, or opting for other energy sources like
Yeah.
solar. So
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been absolutely beautiful so far. We've had such, beautiful conversations. It's been great. I've enjoyed this episode greatly, and I do want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. And yeah, probably later we could actually even have another episode, and talk about a lot more things, about open source, about, you know, um, AI, talk about a whole lot more. Actually, even collaborate with other developers. I may bring someone else to join us because you are someone to chat with and talk about, technical things like these. You've got quite an interesting journey, and your insights are absolutely, great. Yeah, any final words do you want to say to the audience? And also, you could tell them to like and subscribe.
Yeah, sure. So it was nice having to talk to you, Joshua. It was nice answering your questions and just basically discussing about
My pleasure.
all the today. And if you're out there listening and you're not, subscribed yet, it'd be nice to subscribe to the podcast, because there's going to be like a lot more of insightful discussions that's going to come out in subsequent times. So I encourage everyone to subscribe and like and just support. So yeah. Final words. If you're out there and you're trying to like pick up something, trying to learn the next tech skill or anything, just basically keep at it. Don't get overwhelmed. It's fine to get overwhelmed actually, but don't let it stop you, right? There could be lows, there could be highs. So on the lows, just learn to like stay tuned and also get back to the grind. Yeah, so those are my final words.
Wonderful. It's been a great episode today. All right, so we're gonna see you on the next episode.